Thank you for listening. This course was created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional podcasts, books, newsletters, and cool merchandise await. Let's get started. Training time integrity refers to the assurance that the process of building an artificial intelligence model is trustworthy and uncompromised. It encompasses several dimensions: the accuracy of data and labels used for training, the reproducibility of training processes, and the overall security of the pipeline. Without training integrity, models may inherit hidden vulnerabilities, biases, or weaknesses that persist throughout their lifecycle. Unlike inference-time failures, which can sometimes be detected and filtered at runtime, training time compromises are often deeply embedded in the model's parameters and difficult to remove later. Maintaining training integrity is therefore essential for producing models that are not only accurate but also reliable, auditable, and resilient against adversarial manipulation. It is the foundation upon which all subsequent stages of AI security depend. Threats during training are varied, reflecting both technical and operational risks. Label tampering is one of the most direct threats, where malicious actors deliberately misassign labels to corrupt the learning process. Gradient manipulation represents a subtler but equally serious risk, where adversaries alter the optimization process to push models toward compromised states. Compromised infrastructure introduces another layer of vulnerability, with attackers gaining access to nodes, storage, or communication channels during distributed training. Misconfigured pipelines also open the door to failures, as improper security settings or flawed automation can unintentionally allow tampering. Together, these threats highlight the fragility of training. A single weakness in data, computation, or process can have long-lasting consequences for model trustworthiness. Label manipulation risks deserve particular attention because they directly distort the ground truth that models rely on. Intentional mislabeling may cause a model to confuse one class with another, undermining performance in targeted areas. Random noise injection, while less systematic, can still reduce accuracy by overwhelming training with meaningless or misleading data. Class imbalance, whether accidental or deliberate, skews the model toward overfitting on dominant categories and underperforming on rare but important ones. Systematic biasing compounds the problem by embedding harmful correlations that reproduce discrimination or unfair outcomes. Label quality is therefore a frontline defense for training integrity. Without accurate, balanced, and trustworthy labels, no amount of computational rigor can produce a reliable model. Infrastructure-level attacks threaten the backbone of distributed training environments. A single compromised node in a cluster may allow adversaries to manipulate data passing through, corrupt gradients, or even alter stored checkpoints. Interception of data flows between nodes can expose sensitive training inputs or intermediate outputs. Theft of checkpoints is particularly dangerous as they contain model parameters representing substantial intellectual property. Worse still, adversaries may alter these checkpoints before they are reloaded, injecting backdoors or corrupting learned representations. Parameter alteration, whether subtle or blatant, can fundamentally change a model's trajectory during training. These risks illustrate why securing the infrastructure is as critical as protecting the data itself. Without hardened nodes and trusted communications, training pipelines remain vulnerable to deep compromises. Pipeline dependencies represent another layer of exposure. Training workflows often rely heavily on scripts, configuration files, and orchestration tools that manage complex processes. If these scripts are tampered with, attackers can redirect or alter data flows invisibly. Container images, commonly used to package and deploy training environments, may be poisoned if not verified, introducing hidden vulnerabilities into every run. Orchestration layers, such as Kubernetes clusters, bring their own risks if misconfigured or exploited. Third-party libraries, often imported wholesale, can carry malicious code or latent flaws that compromise security. Because pipelines are deeply interdependent, even one compromised dependency can taint the entire process. This interconnection underscores the importance of securing not only the obvious components of training, but also the hidden scaffolding that supports it. Reproducibility is the linchpin for establishing trust in training. If a model can be rerun under the same conditions and produce the same results, defenders gain a baseline for verification. This reproducibility allows silent tampering to be detected, since deviations from expected results signal interference. It also enables independent audits, where third parties can replicate training to confirm integrity. Without reproducibility, organizations lack a benchmark to compare against, making compromises difficult to detect. Beyond security, reproducibility also strengthens scientific credibility, ensuring that results are not accidents of environment or hidden manipulation. For AI in critical domains, reproducibility becomes both a technical necessity and a governance requirement, anchoring integrity in evidence rather than assumption. Logging requirements form a critical layer of training time integrity because they capture the evidence of what actually happened during each run. Inputs must be logged to provide traceability of the data used, including its source and any pre-processing applied. Outputs, whether in the form of checkpoints or performance metrics, should also be recorded to establish a complete lifecycle of each iteration. Parameter configurations, such as learning rates, batch sizes, and optimizer settings, must be stored to ensure that results are interpretable and reproducible. Even environment variables and dependency versions are important, since they can influence outcomes in subtle ways. Provenance of dependencies, including scripts and libraries, should be logged to detect tampering and provide accountability. Without robust logging, silent manipulation can occur unnoticed, and defenders are left with little forensic data when investigating anomalies. Secure configuration practices reinforce training integrity by minimizing risks in the software environment. Version pinning ensures that code relies on specific, verified versions of libraries, preventing unexpected behavior from sudden updates. Isolating dependencies in controlled environments reduces the chance of cross-contamination between projects. Signed containers add cryptographic assurance, verifying that training images have not been altered before deployment. Validation of build artifacts further ensures that what enters the pipeline is identical to what was intended. These practices address a common source of compromise, the sprawl of dependencies and configurations in modern machine learning workflows. By tightening control over configuration, organizations reduce uncertainty and make it harder for attackers to exploit hidden weaknesses. Hardware considerations extend integrity concerns down to the physical level. Graphics processing units and other accelerators must be trusted, since they carry out the actual mathematical operations that define training. Firmware trust is vital, as compromised firmware could alter computations in ways undetectable at the software layer. Attestation mechanisms help verify that training occurs in a secure environment, confirming the authenticity of the hardware and software stack. Isolation in cloud tenancy protects workloads from neighboring tenants, preventing cross-tenant leakage or manipulation. As training increasingly relies on large-scale, distributed infrastructure, these hardware-level safeguards ensure that trust is not assumed but verified. Training time integrity is only as strong as the hardware foundation on which it rests. Encryption during training provides confidentiality and resilience at multiple layers. Protecting model checkpoints with encryption ensures that intellectual property cannot be stolen or tampered with if storage is compromised. Secure communication between nodes prevents interception of gradients or data during distributed training. Encrypting stored datasets reduces the risk of exposure should unauthorized access occur. Even logs, which may contain sensitive metadata or configuration details, must be encrypted to prevent leakage of operational information. These encryption practices align with established cybersecurity principles applied here to the unique artifacts of machine learning. They ensure that sensitive assets remain protected not only in theory but in practice, even when attackers succeed in breaching parts of the environment. Access control is the companion to encryption, ensuring that only authorized individuals or services can interact with the training environment. Role-based permissions define which users can launch training runs, modify configurations, or access checkpoints. Monitoring privileged users is essential since administrators hold significant power and represent a potential insider threat. Credential rotation reduces the chance that stolen or leaked credentials can be reused indefinitely. The principle of least privilege applies here as it does elsewhere. No user or process should have more access than necessary. By limiting and monitoring access to training clusters, organizations shrink the opportunities for adversaries to interfere with critical stages of model development. Verification techniques close the loop by confirming that outputs are consistent with expectations. Cross-run consistency checks compare results across repeated training sessions to detect anomalies that suggest tampering. Hash comparisons validate that outputs, including checkpoints and logs, have not been altered. Random sampling of outputs against known benchmarks ensures correctness and highlights unexpected deviations. Audit replication, where independent teams repeat training with the same inputs and configurations, provides the strongest assurance of integrity. Together, these methods transform training from a black box into a transparent, verifiable process. Verification is not just about catching errors. It is about proving, with evidence, that training proceeded as intended, a cornerstone of both technical trust and regulatory compliance. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Incident detection during training is vital because even the best-prepared systems can still experience compromise. One signal comes from anomaly detection in training loss. If the curve diverges dramatically from expected patterns, it may suggest tampering or corrupted data. Sudden spikes in error, especially when inputs or configurations have not changed, can also indicate malicious interference. Divergence from baseline curves built from previous runs gives defenders a way to compare current behavior against historical norms. Setting alert thresholds ensures that anomalies are flagged in real time rather than discovered after the fact. Incident detection, when tied to monitoring systems, transforms unexpected behaviors into actionable signals, giving teams a chance to intervene before compromised models move further down the pipeline. Response strategies determine what happens once an incident is suspected. One option is rolling back to a prior checkpoint, effectively resetting the model to a state before suspected tampering occurred. If infrastructure is compromised, isolating the cluster prevents the issue from spreading further. Retraining from a clean state may be necessary if corruption is deeply embedded, though this is resource-intensive. Forensic investigation complements these steps by determining whether the anomaly was accidental, environmental, or adversarial in origin. Together, these strategies form the backbone of resilience, quick containment, followed by careful recovery. Without clear response playbooks, organizations risk losing valuable time and allowing damage to compound during a crisis. Standards for training security provide external anchors that organizations can rely on. Frameworks from international bodies such as ISO or guidance from NIST establish best practices for secure machine learning. Sector-specific guidelines add further granularity, recognizing that healthcare, finance, or defense may require stricter controls. Cloud vendors increasingly offer certifications for secure AI training environments, providing reassurance for organizations that rely on shared infrastructure. Reproducibility mandates, whether from regulators or industry groups, formalize expectations for verifiable results. These standards do not eliminate the need for vigilance, but provide baselines that organizations can measure themselves against. They also foster consistency across industries, reducing the fragmentation that adversaries could exploit. Operational best practices translate principles into daily discipline. Controlled data ingestion ensures that only vetted and approved inputs reach the training pipeline. Staged execution, where training occurs in phases with validation at each step, reduces the chance that errors or attacks propagate unchecked. Automated unit testing of pipeline components verifies that scripts, libraries, and containers behave as intended. Independent audits provide oversight, giving external parties the opportunity to confirm integrity and detect weaknesses. These practices are not glamorous, but they form the backbone of reliable training operations. By embedding them into routine workflows, organizations turn integrity from aspiration into habit, reducing reliance on ad hoc defenses. Integration with continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines, often referred to as machine learning operations or MLOps, adds another layer of rigor. Automated reproducibility checks ensure that results can be rerun and verified before promotion to production. Signed build promotion prevents tampered artifacts from moving forward, providing assurance that only trusted versions are deployed. Continuous verification ensures that training outputs are validated at every stage, catching anomalies before they escalate. MLOps integration bridges the gap between development and operations, ensuring that security and reproducibility are enforced systematically rather than manually. This automation reduces human error while keeping pace with the rapid iteration cycles common in AI development. The risk of insider threats must also be addressed explicitly. Administrators and operators hold significant privileges which can be misused intentionally or accidentally. Subtle tampering by insiders may not be obvious, especially if changes blend into normal variability. Conflicts of interest can also create pressures that lead to compromised integrity. Audit trails provide a key defense, recording every action taken by privileged users and enabling retrospective analysis. By monitoring for anomalies in admin behavior and enforcing segregation of duties, organizations reduce the chance that insiders can act unchecked. Insider threats remind us that not all risks come from outside adversaries. Some emerge from those entrusted with the greatest access. Balancing security and cost is a constant challenge when protecting training time integrity. Strong reproducibility measures, redundant validation, and independent audits all add overhead in terms of compute, storage, and staff resources. Encryption of checkpoints, multi-factor authentication for clusters, and continuous monitoring introduce latency and operational expense. Organizations must therefore prioritize controls according to risk, focusing the most intensive safeguards on high-value or sensitive projects. Trade-offs become unavoidable. Scaling defenses to every pipeline may not be feasible, yet underprotection leaves critical vulnerabilities exposed. The key lies in adopting a risk-based approach, where cost and security are weighed together, ensuring that resources are allocated to where the consequences of failure would be most severe. Despite these trade-offs, investment in training integrity pays dividends. The cost of prevention is often far less than the cost of remediation after compromise. A poisoned model may need full retraining, a process that can consume weeks of compute and millions of dollars in resources. Beyond financial cost, reputational damage and regulatory penalties can dwarf initial savings gained by cutting corners on security. Training time integrity should therefore be seen not only as a defensive measure, but as an enabler of long-term efficiency. Secure, reproducible processes reduce wasted cycles, make failures easier to diagnose, and increase organizational confidence in deploying AI at scale. The role of reproducibility and logging is central to this efficiency. Without them, investigations into anomalies devolve into guesswork, wasting time and resources. With them, forensic trails and audit records enable rapid identification of the root cause, whether technical error or adversarial attack. These tools also support compliance by providing evidence to regulators or stakeholders that training proceeded correctly. In practice, reproducibility and logging act as multipliers. They amplify the effectiveness of other defenses by providing the visibility needed to prove integrity. They shift the conversation from trust by assumption to trust by verification, an essential transition for AI systems operating in critical or regulated environments. Training time integrity also reinforces broader governance by providing assurance across teams and stakeholders. Leaders can trust that results are reliable, regulators can verify that standards are met, and customers can rely on outputs derived from trustworthy processes. It becomes a shared foundation that connects technical, operational, and governance domains. Without it, uncertainty spreads. Was a failure due to poisoned data, faulty infrastructure, or malicious tampering? With it, confidence grows, not because mistakes never occur, but because their sources can be identified and addressed. Governance frameworks increasingly recognize this, embedding reproducibility, logging, and training integrity into their core requirements. In summary, training time integrity is about defending the trustworthiness of the learning process itself. Threats such as label tampering, gradient manipulation, compromised infrastructure, and misconfigured pipelines all erode that trust. Controls including logging, secure configurations, hardware attestation, encryption, and access control strengthen resilience. Verification techniques, standards, and operational best practices add layers of assurance. Insider risks and cost trade-offs complicate implementation, but reproducibility and governance provide guiding principles. By combining these measures, organizations protect the heart of AI development, ensuring models are built on solid, verifiable ground. Thanks for tuning in to Bare Metal Cyber, your trusted source for cybersecurity educational materials, news, and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.